Your teeth hurt. You know that dull, throbbing ache that creeps up the side of your jaw. You have a cavity. Maybe two. You have access to dentists, fluoride toothpaste, electric toothbrushes, mouthwash, floss, and still, your mouth is falling apart. Now, consider this. For roughly 300,000 years, your ancestors had none of those things. No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no dentist, not even a mirror to check their own teeth. And yet, when researchers examine skulls from that era, they find almost no cavities at all. What did they know that you don't? The answer has nothing to do with hygiene. It has everything to do with what they were, and weren't, putting in their mouths. Let's go back, way back, to a morning roughly 15,000 years ago. You wake up on the African savanna. The air is cool, the grass is long, you stretch, scratch, and begin moving with your group toward a riverbed where you know certain roots grow near the water. You eat as you walk. A handful of berries. Some fibrous tubers you pull from the ground and gnaw raw. A piece of dried meat left from last night's hunt. Your jaw works hard, your teeth grind, but nothing you are eating is sticky. Nothing lingers in the grooves between your molars. Nothing feeds the bacteria living in your mouth. By the time the sun is overhead, you have eaten the equivalent of what most people today call a full meal, and your teeth are essentially self-cleaned. This is not a coincidence. This is biology doing exactly what it was built to do. Researchers have been studying ancient dental remains for decades. In 2013, a team led by Christina Warinner at the University of Zurich extracted ancient dental plaque, technically called dental calculus, from hunter-gatherer skulls and analyzed its microbial DNA. What they found was extraordinary. The mouths of pre-agricultural humans contained a completely different bacterial ecosystem than the mouths of modern humans. The ancient oral microbiome was rich in bacteria that do not produce acid. It was balanced, diverse, stable. The bacteria that cause tooth decay, primarily Streptococcus mutans, were present in tiny, almost negligible amounts. Then, something changed. Around 10,000 years ago, in a stretch of land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a region archaeologists call the Fertile Crescent, humans began farming. They began growing wheat, barley, legumes, and then, slowly, inevitably, they began processing those grains into bread, porridge, and paste, foods that were soft, foods that were starchy, foods that stuck to teeth and broke down into simple sugars almost instantly. Warinner's research showed that within just a few generations of this dietary shift, the oral microbiome collapsed, diversity dropped sharply, acid-producing bacteria exploded, and cavities, which had been vanishingly rare, became common. Dental remains from early farming settlements confirm this precisely. Studies published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that Neolithic farming populations, Neolithic, meaning the era when humans first adopted agriculture, had cavity rates between 10 and 14% of all teeth examined. Compare that to hunter-gatherers from the same period, cavity rates below 2%. That is a sevenfold increase in tooth decay, from one generation to the next. Not because of worse hygiene, because of different food. But here is where it gets even more interesting. The agricultural shift was not the only trigger. Sugar refining, the extraction and concentration of sucrose from sugarcane, was first industrialized in India around 500 BCE. As refined sugar spread through trade routes into Europe and the Middle East, cavity rates spiked again. Historian and paleoanthropologist Alan Cooper has written extensively about how medieval European dental remains show a sharp deterioration in oral health that tracks almost perfectly with increases in sugar availability. Skulls from 12th century England show dramatically more decay than skulls from 5th century England. Same people, same land, different diet. The pattern is unmistakable. Every time humans introduced a new ultra-processed, sticky, sugar-dense food into the diet, the teeth paid the price. So, what exactly were hunter-gatherers eating that protected their teeth? First, fiber. Raw vegetables, tough roots, and unprocessed meats require serious chewing. That chewing generates saliva, and saliva is your mouth's primary natural defense system. It neutralizes acid, washes away food particles, and contains antimicrobial proteins that actively suppress harmful bacteria. The more you chew, the more saliva you produce. and the more effectively your mouth cleans itself. Studies measuring modern populations who still eat largely unprocessed whole foods, certain rural populations in Africa and the Amazon, show dramatically lower rates of tooth decay than populations eating Western diets, even when neither group uses toothbrushes or toothpaste. Second, absence of fermentable carbohydrates. Streptococcus mutans, the primary culprit behind cavities, does not simply eat sugar, it ferments it. It converts simple carbohydrates into lactic acid, and that acid dissolves tooth enamel. Without a steady supply of refined grain, corn syrup, or processed sugar, mutants simply could not dominate the oral environment. It existed, it just had nothing to feast on. Third, natural abrasives. Hunter-gatherer food was often gritty, tiny particles of stone, dirt, and plant fiber got into everything. Bone and teeth from that era often show heavy wear patterns, not from grinding jaw tension, but from literally chewing slightly abrasive food. Anthropologist Peter Lucas at the George Washington University has studied masticatory mechanics, the physics of how teeth break down food, in ancient and modern populations. His research suggests that mild abrasion from natural food textures likely helped scour bacterial films from tooth surfaces in ways that modern soft foods simply do not. Now, here is the counterintuitive part that nobody tells you. The toothbrush was not invented to fight cavities, it was invented to deal with the consequences of a diet that was already destroying teeth. The first bristled toothbrush appeared in China around 1498 CE. That is 9,000 years after farming began, 9,000 years after cavity rates first exploded. The toothbrush was not a solution to a new problem, it was a patch applied to damage that diet had already caused. And it has never fully worked, because no amount of brushing can fully counteract the effect of feeding decay causing bacteria 3 times a day. Every day, for an entire lifetime. This does not mean toothbrushes are useless, they are not. They reduce the bacterial load in your mouth and slow the damage. But they are fighting upstream against a food system designed to produce exactly the conditions in which tooth decay thrives. Let's reconstruct what your ancestral mouth actually looked like. Researchers examining skulls from the late Paleolithic, roughly 40,000 to 10,000 years ago, describe remarkably intact dental arches. Teeth worn flat from heavy use but not rotted. Gums healthy. Jaw structure wide and symmetrical, because chewing hard food during development produced broader palates and straight teeth. There was no need for orthodontics. No need for root canals. No need for extraction. The archaeological record does not show people dying from infected teeth, which is a legitimate cause of death today and throughout history after agriculture. Before farming, teeth were simply not the problem. The Blombos cave site in South Africa, which contains artifacts from modern human behavior dating back 75,000 years, has yielded skeletal remains with remarkably healthy dental profiles. The same pattern appears in remains from Pinnacle Point on the South African coast. These were not lucky individuals, this was the norm. And then, farming arrived, and within a few thousand years, a blink in evolutionary time, tooth decay became one of the defining features of human life. By the medieval period, it had become one of the defining sources of human suffering. Samuel Pepys, the 17th-century English diarist, described his toothaches with more anguish than almost any other physical complaint. Tooth infection killed people, it still does. Your ancestors did not have better hygiene than you, they had better inputs. They chewed food that cleaned as it was chewed. They ate in ways that kept their oral microbiome balanced and diverse. They never asked their teeth to process the refined, sticky, acid-producing substance that now makes up the majority of calories in the modern human diet. And their teeth, in return, lasted their entire lives without falling apart. You wake up with a toothache. You schedule a dentist appointment. You brush twice a day and still end up in the chair with a drill pointed at your molar. And somewhere in the back of your biology, in the bacteria living in your mouth right now, in the saliva that your jaw produces when you finally chew something real, your body remembers exactly how this was supposed to work. It just has not been given the chance in a very long time.